All right. Excellent. All right. Well, welcome everyone to this creative session with WellSaid Studio. So today we're going to be talking about pronunciation. And so what we're really going to dive into is the pronunciation tool within WellSaid Studio. And the pronunciation tool it's a very powerful tool that we have in Studio. It's really a way to make sure that you're getting the voices to say your scripts in exactly the way that you want. And that may be adjusting the spelling of a word to get the pronunciation the way that you want. It may be changing some text to another text. We'll show some creative ways that you can use pronunciation to actually simply change one thing to another. It's really at its heart a text replacement tool. And you'll see that all in action as we go along. So we've got 30 minutes scheduled. The plan here is we'll probably spend about 20 minutes or so featuring pronunciation, showing all the different ways that you can utilize it to make the most out of your productions. And then with the last 10 minutes or so, I'll save that time for any questions or answers that anyone may have. So if you have any questions as we go along, please utilize the Q&A that we have. I will try to address everything that we get. If for whatever reason we're not able to get to everyone's questions, anyone that I don't get to live today, I will go ahead and follow up with after the fact and make sure that all questions get answered. Additionally, this session will be available after the fact, after this is ended. I believe everyone that attends, we will get a link out to you so you can watch this again. Additionally, we will have a link available to those who were unable to attend. So if you have any colleagues that might be interested in this, we'll make sure that you have all the information available so that you can pass this along and they can watch this session as well. We do have a chat function available as well. If something comes up, for some reason my audio stops working, anything like that, feel free to pop that up in the chat and I'll see if I can troubleshoot that. I think we'll be good. I noticed Tom already put a comment in there saying that the sound and video are good. So great to hear. So let's get into it. Let me go ahead and exit out of this, get that display. Oh, my audio test. There we are. Okay, so I'm just going to hop right in. So based on the guest list that I saw, I think about half of the people that are on this session today have actually been in Studio before or even customers of ours. Maybe half of you have never actually utilized Studio before. So I won't get into all the ins and outs of exactly how everything in Studio works, but you're going to see how easy it is as we go along to create audio and then to adjust that audio as we move forward. So I'm here in Studio. I'm ready to start creating some audio. And as I said, we're going to work through all the different ways that you can use pronunciation, this tab on the left-hand side, our pronunciation tool, which gets you into our pronunciation library, to ensure that the sound that you're getting is exactly what you want, and then also to save you time moving forward. And you're going to see how that works. Essentially, pronunciation allows you to, to create more often than not, a phonetic spelling of a word that the original sound wasn't quite what you wanted, and then put that word into your pronunciation library so that moving forward, it gets automatically replaced and you no longer have to use that phonetic spelling in your future productions. Save you a lot of time and of course get the sound exactly the way that we want. So throughout this process, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be inputting some scripts into our text editor, choosing some voices, listening to the sound, and then making any adjustments as needed as we go along. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to start with some of the more basic instances that people will be utilizing pronunciation. I'm going to grab a sentence here or a script. I'm going to choose one of our voice actors. We've got 15 voice actors to choose from. I'm going to go ahead and grab Nicole for this first script. So I've chosen my voice actor. I've got my script in there. I'm rendering the audio. Please reach out to our supervisory staff members for assistance is what I'm hoping to hear. And let's go ahead and hear how Nicole pronounces the sentence, how the sound is.
Please reach out to our supervisory staff members for assistance.
So Nicole pronounced this word not quite the way that I wanted it to be. So she said supervisory, and I really want this to sound like supervisory. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to need to adjust the spelling of this so that I get the sound the way that I want. And so since the VIS was really the part that gave a little bit of trouble, she said viz. I need to make this more vi. So I'm going to think, how would we spell that phonetically to get this to work? I'm going to go ahead and replace that I with a Y and see if that gets the sound that I want.
Please reach out to our supervisory staff members for assistance.
So that was close. Although, to me, when I hear or when I say supervisory, I actually pronounce that second S more like a Z. And I think that's how I want it to sound. So I'm going to go ahead and replace that S with a Z. And we'll go ahead and render this and see if that gets a little bit more natural sound from here.
Please reach out to our supervisory staff members for assistance.
There we go. That's exactly what I wanted. I wanted that supervise, almost a Z sound in there. So now here's where the power of the pronunciation tool comes into play. I'm going to take this phonetic spelling that they achieved the sound that I want. I'm going to go ahead and copy that. And I'm going to go into my pronunciation tool or my pronunciation library. And the way that this works is on the left-hand side, I'm going to go ahead and type in the word or phrase. You actually have up to 64 characters that you can choose to replace, and that can 64 characters that can replace the phrase as well. So either of these text boxes, you have that option. On the left side, I'm going to put in the word or phrase that I want to replace. On the right side, I'm going to go ahead and put in that phonetic spelling that I discovered got the result that I want. Then I'll click add. Now this is in my pronunciation library. So now when I go into Studio, and I'm just going to refresh that original script by hitting the little refresh button here. Now in my script, when that word that's in my pronunciation library comes up, as long as I have my pronunciation tab on, right? So now I have it on, you're going to notice it says one word replaced. And when I render this audio, even though I haven't changed anything, the pronunciation tool knows to change this word. You'll actually see in the preview down here that supervisory with a VYZ is automatically replaced in there. So now from this point on, anytime that word comes up, supervisory, I no longer have to type in the phonetic spelling. It's just automatically going to be replaced for me. And this is across all voice actors as well. So no matter which voice actor you choose, the phonetic spelling will get replaced and you should get the sound that you want. So that's how pronunciation works. Now we're going to start to get into all the different ways that we can utilize this pronunciation tool. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start putting in some scripts. We'll talk our way through them. I'm not necessarily going to go in and put all these into the pronunciation library right now while we're talking. We don't need to take that extra time. Just be aware that if you discovered this if you discovered this while you were working through, you would just default to putting them in your pronunciation library. But just for the sake of time today, I won't actually be adding all of these in as we go along, just showing how we can make those changes to get the sound the way that we want. All right, so let's get rolling. I'm going to go ahead and paste another script in here, and I'm going to go ahead and choose another voice actor. So I'm going to use Alana in this case. Of all the cheeses in the world, my favorite has to be mozzarella. So we have a word that may give Alana a little bit of trouble. Let's find out.
Of all the cheeses in the world, my favorite has to be mozzarella.
So a word from a foreign language or a language other than English maybe would be a better way to put that, mozzarella. So she just pronounced this the way that if someone didn't know what a word was and they kind of followed the basic English pronunciation rules, as complex as those are, they might say it the way that she did, mozzarella. You just sort of hit those Z's. And I'm not going to get into sort of the Italian pronunciation of this, but the way that, a typical, American English, the way that you would pronounce this, which is really, you'd sort of put a T sound in there, mozzarella. And so I think if I throw that T in there, this should get the sound that I like. We'll go ahead and listen and see how it sounds.
Of all the cheeses in the world, my favorite has to be mozzarella.
Perfect. There we go. So I would add that into my pronunciation library. Now moving forward, I no longer have to worry about that spelling. So let's get into some different examples. So these are just some basic words. A lot of our customers are in the medical industry, and they're creating this content that has either either brand names like Allegra in this case, or they have the names of the actual medicines themselves, fexofenadine in this case. And then additionally, we have this hydrochloride abbreviation here. We'll see how this works out. I'm going to choose a different voice actor so we can sort of showcase a lot of our talent here. I'll choose Sophia. We'll go ahead and let Sophia narrate this.
The active ingredient in Allegra is fexofenadine HCl.
So that wasn't too bad, but the way that she said phenadine isn't quite the way that I want. Plus, I don't actually want her to say HCl. I want her to say hydrochloride. And so there's something that we could replace. I could actually replace this HCl, sort of this abbreviation, with the actual word hydrochloride. That should handle that part. Fexofenadine. So I need to kind of split this up. I think phenadine is fine, but just the fact that it was this longer word sort of squeezed together, I think is what gave the trouble. So I'm going to go ahead and throw a hyphen in there. And by splitting that word up with a hyphen, we'll get the pronunciation of the first part, then the pronunciation of the second part. And I think that'll get it. Let's find out.
The active ingredient in Allegra is fexofenadine hydrochloride.
Oh, interesting. So we got the phenadine, but then the FEXO on its own got pronounced fexo. Not a problem. Let's think of a phonetic way to spell that. I think, fexo, phenadine, then moving forward should handle this.
The active ingredient in Allegra is fexofenadine hydrochloride.
Perfect. So again, I can use this hyphenated word to replace the proper spelling of fexofenadine. I can use hydrochloride to replace that HCl. And again, moving forward, those will automatically get replaced. Let's give some other examples. So I'm going to go ahead and hop in and let's choose a different voice actor. I'll let Jeremy have a shot at this one. So WellSaid Labs is located in Seattle, Washington, within blocks of the Space Needle and in the shadow of Mount Rainier. That's how I'd like it to sound. Let's find out.
WellSaid Labs is located in Seattle, WA, within blocks of the Space Needle and in the shadow of MT Rainier.
Empty Rainier. So we have a couple of things to correct here. As we saw, the WA, the abbreviation of Washington, just got pronounced as WA. Not a problem. Let's go ahead and just type in Washington. We could add that to our pronunciation library and we'd be good to go. Additionally, when you type out a city and state, you'll throw a comma in there. I don't actually need that pause, so I'm going to eliminate the comma. Everything else was good. It didn't get the abbreviation of mountain in here, or mount in this case. So I'm going to go ahead and type that in. I could add that to my pronunciation library. However, you won't have to do this with all these abbreviations. If you had Mr. or Mrs. or Doctor, the abbreviations of those, the AI is going to recognize that and it'll go ahead and say Mr. or Mrs. or Doctor in that case. But in this case, mount, we need to go ahead and replace that. So we'll go ahead and render this with those changes. And I believe that should handle what we were trying to do.
WellSaid Labs is located in Seattle, Washington, within blocks of the Space Needle and in the shadow of Mount Rainier.
Perfect. Love it. So let's get into some other examples, some different cases where you might utilize this pronunciation. I'm going to go ahead and grab a different voice actor. We'll let Wade do this. Hank Aaron holds the MLB records regular season record with 2,297 RBI. So we have a couple of acronyms in here. It'll be interesting to see how the AI handle these acronyms.
Hank Aaron holds the MLB regular season record with 2,297 RBI.
So that was fine. He actually read it exactly how it's written out. So great. I don't need to make any adjustments. However, and we can get into a debate about this if we want. A lot of times what you'll see when this is typed out is people say RBIs. Now, RBI actually stands for runs, plural, batted in. So technically you don't need to pluralize this acronym, but more often than not, that's actually what you're going to tend to see is RBIs written out. Let's go ahead and see what happens when we try to pluralize an acronym.
Hank Aaron holds the MLB regular season record with 2,297 RBIs.
So see, we had a little bit of trouble when we pluralized the acronym. It said the R, and then it decided that BIS was its own thing. So I'm going to go ahead and just split this up. I'm going to go RB, and then I'm going to change the end of that, and I'm just going to put a phonetic replacement for eyes. I'm just actually literally going to type out eyes, EYES, and see if that gets us that replacement for RBIs that I was looking for.
Hank Aaron holds the MLB regular season record with 2,297 RBIs.
Perfect. So now I could actually use RBIs to replace that RBIS, RBIs. Another example. So a lot of times you're going to be using some other abbreviations that, for example, in this case, we've got some units of measurement, some distances. We'll grab a different voice actor. So 1 kilometer equals 0.6 miles. We have a few things. We have some abbreviations. We have a symbol in here. We have a decimal number. Let's see how David does with this.
1 km equals 0.6 miles.
So that MI got cut off because it didn't recognize it as an acronym or an abbreviation, I should say. And then also there was no punctuation. There was no period at the end of the sentence. So it sort of thought it should keep reading, but it got cut off. Not a problem. Let's go ahead and replace km with kilometer. And then let's go ahead and replace mi with mile, except what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pluralize both of these. And I know one is singular, so it should just be 1 kilometer. However, more often than not, if you're using this in your productions, it's going to be a plural number. Even 0.6, you would typically say miles, right? When it's less than 1. And so by default, I'm going to go ahead and have my fix be, or excuse me, my pronunciation replacement be from km to kilometers. And then if I needed to make the adjustment for singular, I would just eliminate the S and it could be kilometer. Let's listen.
1 kilometers equals 0.6 miles.
Great. So miles sort of trailed off because I didn't throw a period at the end of this sentence, so it didn't treat it as the end of a sentence. However, the one thing I do want to note is this was spoken as 1 kilometers. That's fine. That's the way that I would say it. However, depending where you're from, you might say kilometer instead of kilometer. We can do that. We just need to split that word up. Let's go ahead and hyphenate this so we have the kilo separated from the meters and see how that works out.
1 kilometers equals 0.6 miles.
So now we have the kilo pronunciation. So if that's what you preferred, you're going to use this spelling in your pronunciation library for the replacement of that km. Similar example. So designed for use by both adults and children. Let's go ahead and let Patrick read this one for us. And let's see here. Let's listen.
Designed for use by both adults and children.
Yeah, perfect read. And as I was saying, this is similar to the last one in that some people want adults to be pronounced adults instead of adults. Not a problem. We just need to change the way that we write this out or type this out to get that sound. Now, if I split it up adults, the problem is we're probably still going to get adults because A on its own gets pronounced So we need more of an ad sound. In fact, I could probably just split it up this way, adults. And when you sort of squeeze that together, we'll get that adult sound instead of adult.
Designed for use by both adults and children.
Perfect. So if we prefer that pronunciation of adults, this is how we're going to do that. We're just going to change the spelling to get sort of that, we'll call it a regional pronunciation of a word. And speaking of regional pronunciations of words, we have a couple of things that may come into play with this sentence. So let's have Ramona read this. Salted caramel was invented in 1977 by the French pastry chef Henry Leroux. So we've got a French name in here. We have a date. We have a couple other words that may give us some unique pronunciations. Let's listen.
Salted caramel was invented in 1977 by the French pastry chef Henry Leroux.
So we got Henry Leroux, the French name, no problem. 1977, it said 1977. A lot of times that'll happen with numbers. It'll just default to saying it as if it was a number. We know this is a date. We want it to say 1977. I'll just split it up, 1977. Shouldn't be a problem. The other thing that I noticed, salted caramel. Now, if you're from the East Coast of the United States, caramel for the most part is going to sound right to you. I'm from the Pacific Northwest. We don't say caramel, we say caramel. And so what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to change that spelling to get the sound that I'm used to hearing and that I would want for my users or my clients or whoever I'm creating these productions for to hear. So I changed caramel to caramel by just eliminating the A.
Salted caramel was invented in 1977 by the French pastry chef Henry Leroux.
Perfect. So I would, I'm not really going to worry about replacing 1977 in my pronunciation library. The odds that that date comes up over and over again is probably pretty small. I could put it in there, but it doesn't take much time to just throw that space with dates. If you're constantly dealing with dates or it's a date that your company was founded, yeah, throw it in there. It's not going to hurt to have that in there. If you work with a lot of numbers though, and for some reason 1977 comes up a lot, Probably don't want to throw that in your library unless you're comfortable with it being said 1977. So we said we'd spend maybe 20 minutes or so working on these things and then answer some questions. Based on, we do have some questions that I will get to based on the volume that I see right now. We've got some more time to go through a few more examples. So we'll spend maybe 5 more minutes going through some examples, and then we'll get to the questions that have come up. So let's go ahead and grab a couple other scripts here. I'm going to hand this one off to Kai. So we have an acronym, we have a date, and I think everything else looks pretty reasonable.
Originally named the American Association of Retired Persons, it officially changed its name to Aarp in 1999 to reflect that its focus was no longer American retirees.
Okay, so everything was great. In fact, he said Aarp, which if you hear the commercials, they actually do say Aarp a lot of times. However, let's get this to say AARP. We know how to fix the date. I'm just going to split up 19 and 99. And then for acronyms, so the first thing to do is if the AI decides to read it as a word, the first suggestion would be split each letter up. So just a space between each one. And for the majority of acronyms, that will get the read the way that we want. Let's see how Kai does with this.
Originally named the American Association of Retired Persons, it officially changed its name to ARP in 1999 to reflect that its focus was no longer...
All right, I'll just pause it. RP, yeah, that wasn't what we wanted. Okay, not a problem. So now I just want to get down to the phonetic level. And so we need to spell A as it would be pronounced phonetically. And if you need any help with this and you're working in the studio, here's a great way to do it. So I'm going to click the chat. And I could try to talk to myself, but I'm not available right now. I'm in the middle of a webinar. So instead, I need help with some acronyms. I'm going to go ahead and type in acronym. How do I get the AI to pronounce my acronym correctly? Okay. So in our chat, we have access to our knowledge library here. So let me go ahead and see what this says. Going to pull up this page. How do I get it pronounced? Okay. Perfect. Okay. Awesome. So this actually has, in our knowledge base, we have a table with every letter of the alphabet and a suggestion for a way to spell that out phonetically for each letter, up to 4 different options. So you can reference this if you need to spell an acronym out. And then the other thing too, as you start to see these phonetic spellings, it'll help you with other words that you're working on in studio if you need some adjustments. You sort of start to learn how to spell out sounds in this case. So I looked at that. I'm going to hop back in. I tend to actually find that EIGH gets A more often than not with most of the voice actors. And then R, I can use the word R. Excuse me, P. PEE is a good phonetic spelling of the letter P. And I think this will give me the result that I want. Let's find out. So as soon as this renders up, we'll go ahead and give a listen back. May need a refresh. We'll find out. All right, that was your... Oh, there we go. I gave Kai one last chance, and then I hit the refresh. And that's just a suggestion. So I actually did a hard refresh of Studio there, and that's a Command Shift R if you're utilizing a Mac computer and excuse me, a Chrome browser. If you enter things into your pronunciation library and you find that when that word comes up in your script, sometimes you'll see that it says 0 words replaced, even though that you know your word is in there. Just give a hard refresh of your browser, and that word will pop back up in there, and you'll be just fine moving forward. Okay, so I'm going to hit the little refresh. Is this the one with the adjustment? It is. It rendered right as I was giving up on Kai and hitting the refresh on the browser. Let's listen.
Originally named the American Association of Retired Persons, it officially changed its name to AARP in 1999 to reflect that its focus was no longer American retirees.
So the way that it said RP, I didn't quite like. So I'm just going to throw in a different phonetic spelling of R in there. I'm going to, instead of it being the word R, I'm just going to put this AR in there. I think with a word, sometimes it goes, RP, ARE. It sort of treats that as a second part because it recognizes that word. Let's try this.
Originally named the American Association of Retired Persons, it officially changed its name to AARP in 1999 to reflect that its focus was no longer American retirees.
All right, that's pretty good. I might try a few different ones, and maybe it'll get that just a little bit smoother. But this is plenty good for what I was searching for. Let's give one more here, and who still needs a turn? Ava. So Ava's actually our most popular voice. So I don't know. Maybe I'm saving the best for last. I don't know. We'll see. So we got an acronym. We've got a state, city. We've got a date in here now. Let's see how those get treated.
The American Automobile Association, or AAA, was
Hmm.
founded in Chicago, IL, on March 4, 1902.
Okay, so there's a few things that I want to adjust here. So AAA, it got said, it said all the letters, but it was a little bit unique the way it got read. And really, what I want to do is I'm actually just I want this to say AAA. I don't want it to say AAA. AAA is the more common phrase that people will use with this. We know how to fix the state name. We did that earlier. I'm just going to replace this with Illinois. I eliminated the comma because we don't need that pause. And then the other thing that I want to do is it said March 4, 1902. Well, I want to say March 4th. If you go ahead and throw in that sort of postfix here, that fourth, or if it was a 3, throw the RD in there, the AI will pick that up. It'll say fourth if I do 4th. And then 1902, well, I want this to say 1902. Now, the problem is if I just split it up, 02 is going to get pronounced that way. It's going to say 02. It'll pronounce the numbers. I need this to say 02. So now I'm actually going to replace these numbers with a phonetic spelling of the numbers. And I'm just going to go 02. And I think that should get me the result that I want for this script.
The American Automobile Association, or AAA, was founded in Chicago, Illinois on March 4, 1902.
Perfect. All right. Love it. So one last example, and then I'm going to answer these questions that we have. And so I mentioned earlier that, this doesn't just have to be to replace a word that you don't like the way that it was pronounced or it didn't sound quite the way that you wanted. You can actually just replace some text with other text. And so what you could do, and this doesn't necessarily save a ton of time, but I just want to show how you could use this tool. Let's say you had this offer valid at participating locations at the end of a script that you had. I'm going to create a shortcut. This is the fine print of my production. And so I'm going to create a shortcut by using a symbol that doesn't get pronounced. So an underscore gets recognized, I should say. A symbol that gets recognized by our pronunciation tool. Underscore is great for that. Underscore, fine print, all one word. It's kind of like using a hashtag. And I'm going to go ahead and add that. I'm going to go back into Studio. And so now, anytime that I want, I could go ahead and type in underscore fine print. It recognizes that. You'll notice it says one word replaced. You'll also notice it says I've used 44 characters, even though I only have a few, because it knows that whole phrase is going to go in here. I render it, and all of a sudden,
offer valid only at participating locations.
I've saved some time, probably 10 seconds or so, but save some time by utilizing that. So you can get creative with this. Think of pronunciation as just a way to replace some text with other text. That's really all it comes down to. Up to 64 characters on either end is the limit within there. All right. So we went through, we talked about from the very basic level, just replacing a word that doesn't get pronounced the way that you want, to working with abbreviations, to working with numbers, dates, regional pronunciations of certain words, words from foreign languages, various ways that you can utilize this pronunciation tool. As you continue to work in Studio, you're going to keep adding these things. And you're going to save yourself more and more time as we go along. Have to make less edits to your scripts as you go forward. So I want to get to a few of the questions that were asked in the Q&A here, as well as there may be a couple in chat that I want to take a quick peek at. We are just sort of 1 minute from the scheduled time. If anyone has to hop off, that's completely fine. This is getting recorded, but I do want to get through each of these questions. Ooh, there may be a few extra. Okay, so I might not get through all of them at this time. Actually, you know what? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go through all the questions. If you're able to stay on and listen, great. If you're not, you'll be able to access the recording and you can hear every single question that was asked get answered. Is there a plan to allow a preview function so that we don't waste those clips on pronunciation? That's a great question. Yes. There is a plan in the future for that. Very near future, in fact. I can't give away a ton there will, but absolutely in the very, very near future, you'll be able to adjust those spellings to words without having to worry about the allotment of clips that you have. You'll be able to get it just right, and then you'll be able to use those sort of final cuts for your productions. Pronunciation of foreign words. Yeah, so we kind of did that with mozzarella. Depending on the way that that word is pronounced, you can do foreign words by following a similar process. So utilize the phonetic spelling, and that phonetic spelling should get the sound that you want. Now, here's the thing. The one thing that will happen is, remember, all these voices are speaking American English. So you're not going to get an accent, right? It's still going to be spoken with an American accent. So you can try to phonetically spell it to get it said the way that it would be in a foreign language. You're still going to get it with an American accent. So you can try to be creative, but just know that it may be a little bit of a challenge depending on the language that it comes from. Certain languages, do much better with sort of the American pronunciation than others. As you build your library, does it transfer to all projects? Yes. So the library is going to be good for any of the projects that you're working on. It'll run across the board. Is there a way to adjust pronunciation without creating a file? So similar question. Yes. Stay tuned. Very near future. We have a way to adjust that pronunciation, get the sound just right, and only have to worry about utilizing the final cuts. How do you share pronunciation within your team? Yeah, absolutely. And I also got that same question in the chat. How do you between accounts? So yeah, very, very easy to do. So within the pronunciation tool, you have this option to export your library. And when you do that, as you may see down in the bottom of my screen, it downloaded a CSV file. Then I could send that on to anyone else in my team. And then they're going to click import. They're going to find that file. And then what they're going to do is choose what they want to do with it. Do they want to not overwrite anything in their own pronunciation library? Do they want to overwrite any duplicates that are being imported? Or just, hey, scrap my entire library and only import this new one? In this case, I'm exporting and importing the same thing, so you won't actually see anything change. But in this case, I would have overwritten my entire library and added all these new ones. There we go. Easy way to share that. Yeah, so if you're collaborating with a team, this is a great thing to do from time to time. Send them your pronunciation library, have them send theirs to you, and everyone can sort of be on the same page as they discover those things. Multiple voice artists to say the same word accurately with one pronunciation. So so one of the nice things about our voices is that they sound like real people, right? The idea is we have these very, very realistic voices. One of the things that makes people real and it makes voices sound real is they say things slightly differently. Not only different people say things slightly differently, but the same person will say the same words slightly differently from sentence to sentence. So you will find sometimes that just because one voice actor said something correctly doesn't necessarily mean that another voice actor will also say that correctly. However, when you break things down to that phonetic level and put them in your pronunciation library, more often than not, that's going to work across all voice actors because it's broken down to that phonetic level. And there's only so many ways that you can pronounce things when you get to that level. But do know that it's not a yes. I can't say yes, this will work for every single voice actor. But once you get it down to that phonetic level, it's generally going to work for most of them. And then how do we add emphasis? So we could take a lot of time talking about emphasis. In fact, that may be something that we get into with future versions. But I will just add quickly that for emphasis, you're going to use quotation marks. So throwing something in quotation marks within Studio tells the AI to add or to pay a little bit more attention to that phrase. So where I put participating in quotes here, and if we listen to the original,
offer valid only at participating locations.
And then we listen to this with participating in quotes.
Offer valid only at participating locations.
Change the way that participating got said. So it sort of tells the AI, hey, pay a little bit more attention to this word or phrase. You can actually put entire phrases in quotes. And more often than not, that does mean a little bit more emphasis. But if anything, it just sort of makes that one word or phrase stand out. And then had another question, which is really along a similar vein. Is there a way to preview things before we sort of make a final cut of it? At this time, no. When you render each audio file, you're creating a new audio file that you can listen to and see if it sounds right. But again, very, very near future, wink, wink, there will be a way that you can preview those and then only keep the final cut, so to speak. So no problems. We completely understand. And that's going to be coming into play very, very soon. And then we have a few other questions around some other things that are a little bit beyond pronunciation. I won't necessarily get into everything. Pauses are going to be created via commas, periods, and ellipses. So just some different punctuation that will add the additional pauses. And then the last thing that I'll answer on here, someone did just ask about additional voice actors being added. Yeah, at some point. I don't have I can't say, yeah, for sure this is going to happen at this time, but we're always looking to add more voice actors to create a little bit more variety, a little bit more diversity, different sounds from the voice actors. No direct timeline on that. If a company had something that they wanted specifically, hey, we need someone to speak in this dialect or this language, or we want a specific voice, we can do that. It's a custom option. We can create a custom voice for you. So you'll have to reach out to us. We can discuss how that would work if there's a voice that you want that isn't available within Studio. All right. So if your question did not get answered, it was either something that was just a duplicate question, which means it probably did get answered, or it's something that's a little bit outside of what I'm able to answer myself. And so what I'll do is one specifically regarding some API questions, I will absolutely get to you offline, and we'll make sure that I can direct you to the right person who can answer those questions around our API integration and how that works. So with that, I appreciate everyone who was able to hang out. Thank you for hopping on. We got through this pretty smooth, only the one quick error when I decided to refresh the screen, but we quickly got past that and we're able to get back up and running. So again, thank you for your time. I will make sure that everyone who attended has a link so that they could watch this back or they could pass it along to their colleagues. Additionally, we'll be in communication with a link so that anyone else that would like to attend could follow that link and also view this video. I hope everyone has a great rest of their Thursday. Thank you for attending. Have a great day. We'll see you.